All right, what's going on, everybody? We're 1 week away from the big fight, Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas. Now, this isn't the fight that we wanted, obviously. There is a bit of a letdown that we're not getting the Errol Spence fight. But the more and more I think of this fight, the more intriguing it becomes. Different set of challenges for Manny Pacquiao. He's not going to be facing the aggressive stalker type style that he would have faced against Errol Spence. He's going to have to prepare now for an orthodox fighter as opposed to a southpaw. And as I said before, Manny Pacquiao does not fight like the traditional southpaw, who generally moves to their right. He moves to his left. So, he walks into the power hand of the orthodox fighter, right? So he walks into right hands. That's been his Achilles heel against certain fighters. They would time him and they would wait for him to come forward. And they knew that he would go to that side of the right hand and he would walk into their right hand. And even in the Keith Thurman fight, got hit with quite a bit of right hands because of that. But the problem was, in my opinion, Keith Thurman is not really a big right hand puncher. I thought his money punch was the left hook, right? And Keith Thurman kind of loops his punches, doesn't throw them straight. So Manny Pacquiao wasn't getting the full blunt of that right hand because it was a looping shot. And I think a lot of times when you loop a shot as opposed to throwing it straight and sitting down and getting leverage on it, it takes some of the steam off of it. So let's talk about this fight with Yordenis Ugas. Now, Ugas, like I said, is not that aggressive type fighter like Errol Spence is. So he's going to wait and try to set traps for Manny Pacquiao, and he's going to try to catch him coming in. He's going to try and be that counter puncher, which he normally likes to do in most of his fights. We saw him against Porter. Porter was not that normally aggressive Porter that we were used to seeing. He fought the majority of that fight from the outside. He was taking steps back, sliding back and stepping off to the side, trying to suck Ugas into some counter punches. So he was fighting with a more laid back style than normal. And Ugas, I think, was surprised by that. And I think he mentioned it after the fight that he was expecting Porter to come to him and try to make the fight and try to fight him on the inside. So, when I watched that fight, I thought Porter, because he wasn't as aggressive, I thought that there were hard rounds to score, right? So there were a lot of close rounds. I did end up scoring the fight 116 to 112 for Ugas, but I could definitely see an argument being made that Porter could have eked it out. But there were rounds when Porter was throwing a lot of punches, but he wasn't landing. And Ugas wasn't throwing a ton of punches, but he was still sneaking a body shot in there. He was still landing his jab and an occasional right hand. But there was no sustained attack from either man. But you could definitely see that Porter was the busier fighter, right? And in a lot of those rounds, Ugas may have eked him out just because he may have landed, 2 or 3 punches more than Porter. But at the end of the day, neither man really landed the eye-grabbing punches. Neither man was really hurt. You can make an argument that Porter's right hand was landing a little bit more cleaner than Ugas's was. But Ugas was throwing a nice jab, and he was making a commitment to the body. So he was throwing the jab upstairs, and he would step in. He wouldn't step all the way in, but he would step. He would eke forward a little bit, and he would sneak that right hand down to the body, and then throw that left hook as well. Follow up with the left hook to the other side of the body. So he was slightly busier with the body shots, and he had more success with the body shots. But overall, Porter was the guy who was throwing the punches. He was boxing from the outside, trying to create the openings, and Ugas was kind of laying back, waiting for Porter to come in. It was a real tough fight to score, but you could, in my opinion, I thought Ugas eked out a lot of those rounds because when Porter was backing up in a lot of those rounds, he was appeared to be the one that was being controlled by Ugas. So just on sheer ring generalship by Porter, trying to set the traps, but the traps weren't successful because he wasn't landing while he was moving back. So I'm going to give it to the guy who's moving forward, even though he's not really stepping all the way in. He's at least trying to, you know, create some openings. So both guys were kind of waiting each other out. But in a lot of those rounds, I thought Ugas won because he was landing the body shots. So he was landing more to the body, where neither man was really landing a lot of significant punches to the head. But at the end of the day, Porter threw more and landed more. But like I said, in a lot of those rounds that I gave Ugas, he was just landing that little bit more. In some rounds, you could say neither guy really landed, right? So it was a really tough fight to score. But at the end of the day, I did think Ugas won it, but I have no argument with anyone saying Porter won that fight. But, historically, what I've been seeing and throughout my years watching the sport of boxing, when you do have fights like that, more often than not, the guy who is the busier guy gets rewarded. So neither man really made a commitment to trying to force the fight, but Porter was the guy who was at least trying to throw more, and he appeared to be the guy who was trying to create openings, in the second half of the fight. I thought he came on strong in the second half of the fight, but I thought, Ugas eked a lot of the earlier rounds, right? But whatever the case may be, as I said, the judges don't generally reward the guy who is economical. They don't reward the guy who is trying to be the counterpuncher, the guy who waits for his opponent to come forward. They tend to favor the guy who's coming forward, even though he may not be landing a lot of punches, but at least he is the guy that's trying to force the fight. So some fighters, they fight not to lose. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting not to lose. Like last night, Guillermo Rigondeaux was fighting not to lose. So in a lot of those rounds, even though he may, land a couple clean shots at the beginning of the round and maybe land a clean shot toward the end, but in the middle, he's just backing up, retreating. It's one thing stepping back, trying to set your guy and walk him into traps. It's another thing when you're just totally taking yourself out of range, right? And it looks as though you're retreating and you're just trying to make your opponent miss, but not pay. So in a situation like that, even though you could say, well, this guy landed more shots, even as slightly that, of an advantage that he had in terms of landed punches. He may have landed 2 to 3 clean punches and the other guy may have landed none or even one. But because that guy is the aggressor, a judge will reward him for that, because it looks like the other guy is trying to do as little as possible to try to steal the round and try to win the round. And more often than not, a judge will punish a fighter for fighting that way. So you can make an argument that he may have won the round, right? But then the argument becomes, well, he wasn't trying to win the round. He was trying to not lose the round. So he did very little work. It didn't look like he put forth a solid effort in trying to win the round. So this fight, in my opinion, could play out that same way, right? So some people may say at the end of this fight that the decision will be controversial, because it will all come down to, what do you like? Do you like the guy who's waiting, who's trying to be cagey, who's trying to set the traps? Or do you like the guy who's trying to make the fight, who's coming with the volume, the guy who has the ring generalship on his side because he's trying to be the aggressor? Now the question comes, who will be the effective aggressor, right? Because that's always going to be open to interpretation. So, the 10-point must system is all open to interpretation. So last night I was watching Joe Calix do a live cast, did a great job, him and D-Style. Shout out to Joe Calix, shout out to D-Style Boxing, right? And Joe Calix was saying, even though Rigondeaux landed more punches, even though ever so slightly, he landed more punches than Casemiro in some of those rounds. He was saying that I just can't give him the round because he was moving the whole round, but he was moving just to get out of the just to not get hit, and he wasn't moving to make Casemiro miss and pay. He was just trying to make Casemiro miss with not having any intention of making him pay. And because of that, he didn't give Casemiro the round. So even he said, well, if I'm going by the 10-point must system, I could give Rigondeaux that round, but not necessarily, because you could say to yourself, I'm going to give it because I believe that Casemiro was the aggressor. So he's controlling the fight because he's forcing Rigondeaux back. Rigondeaux is not sliding back on his own volition. It looked to me in a lot of those rounds that he was being forced back. And there were certain situations where he would even turn his back and run away from Casemiro. So based on that, if you're a judge, you can punish a fighter for that. D-Style mentioned, there should be a lack of engagement rule in the sport of boxing. Well, I think some judges already do apply that rule. And I think it was applied to Rigondeaux last night, especially with the judge who scored it 117 and 111 for Casemiro. I scored the fight a draw, and a lot of those rounds that I gave to Rigondeaux, I was holding my nose giving him those rounds because it was so unappealing the way he was fighting. But, he still did outland Casemiro in some of those rounds. And I gave him the round because of that. Now, once again, we could find ourselves in a similar situation. I'm not going to say to that degree that we had last night. It's not going to be as bad as last night. But, there are going to be points in this fight where Ugas is going to just stand in the center of that ring and try to time Manny Pacquiao coming in, right? Those ambush attacks, right? But, Manny Pacquiao, as I said, very unorthodox, comes on with these crazy angles, throws that feint coming in. A lot of times he'll throw that foot feint. And, you may say that at the end of a fight, Pacquiao threw a lot, but he missed a lot too. But Pacquiao throws a lot of throwaway punches. He will throw that right jab with the intent of having his opponent parry it and try to knock it down. And as soon as, that opponent knocks it down, he's looking to sneak that straight left up the center. So he's trying to create that opening. So there'll be a lot of punches he throws with the intent of not landing, but they're throwaway punches because he's trying to open his opponent up to the middle. So you could say, well, there's going to be rounds where you're going to see Pacquiao throwing a lot of punches and may not be landing all of them. So then you can say, oh, well, Ugas is fighting a great defensive fight, but there's a method to Manny Pacquiao's madness because he is trying to elicit a response and create an opening from his opponent. So, there are going to be some close rounds in this fight with Ugas, but I think the judges are going to say, well, Manny Pacquiao's the busier guy. He's the guy coming forward. He's the guy trying to force the fight and make the action. So we're going to give him the round based on that. And that's totally fine to do that. So let's talk about, Manny Pacquiao walking into the right hand. Well, Ugas is another guy similar to Thurman, not the same, similar to Thurman, where he throws his right hand with a loop, right? Doesn't really sit down on that right hand, right? He throws that right hand with the loop. More often than not throws it because he's trying to set up the left hook upstairs or that left hook to the body, right? That's not his money punch. That's not his money punch like it's like Floyd Mayweather's money punch, Eric Morales' money punch, or Juan Manuel Marquez's money punch. That's more along the lines of a throwaway punch for Ugas, right? He uses that to score and create openings as well. He doesn't normally sit down on it and land it flush, doesn't sit down on it and really, throw it overhand over the top, or he doesn't throw it straight down the middle. He kind of loops it and tries to, touch his opponent and tries to loop it around the guard so he can create other punches, particularly body shots or uppercuts or left hooks upstairs, right in the mid-range. But the thing is this. If Manny Pacquiao was moving to that side and Ugas is looping that shot and it's maybe grazing the top of his head and it's not stopping Manny Pacquiao in his tracks, then Manny Pacquiao was going to walk through that punch just like he walked through it with Keith Thurman. So people say, oh, yeah, Thurman was landing a lot of right hands, but Pacquiao really wasn't getting hit flush with them. A lot of them were kind of grazing. A lot of them Pacquiao was rolling. A lot of them Pacquiao was, you know, bracing for, getting low. And they didn't have an incredible effect. Now, the counter argument to that was, well, they're still scoring blows. Yeah, but they did not stop Manny Pacquiao from coming forward, and Manny Pacquiao was still throwing more punches. And you can make an argument that even though Keith Thurman landed slightly more, Manny Pacquiao was forcing the fight. He appeared to be the busier guy, and you could give him rounds on effective aggressiveness. So that's what I think the issue is going to be for Ugas. Judges are going to look at him waiting for the counter, and that counter may not present itself, right? Because Manny Pacquiao is going to get low, right? He's going to get low. He's going to throw those feints. It's going to be hard to time, you know. And I will say this, and I stand on this, that I still think Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion, you could say, is faster on his feet than just about everyone in this welterweight division, probably except for Terrence Crawford and maybe Jerome Boots Ennis. Outside of those two guys, you can make an argument that Pacquiao has the fastest feet in the division, and you can even make a comparison that even with those two guys, he's still close with them, foot speed wise, right? And Ugas is a guy who doesn't move a lot, uses a lot of subtle movement. He'll just plant his feet and wait for you, right? He's not sliding back. He's not trying to step to the side and create those counter punching angles. He's just waiting for you to come forward and make a mistake. And if that's the game plan that he's going to employ in this fight, then I think he's going to have a hard time dealing with Manny Pacquiao coming at him from all different angles. If you're going to stand right in the middle of the ring and wait and allow Manny Pacquiao to come in all different angles, he's going to feint you coming in. I think Ugas is going to have a hard time trying to time Manny Pacquiao coming in and setting him up for those counter shots, right? So Ugas is a minus 300, right? Pacquiao's a plus 240. So there are a lot of people out there that are concerned about Pacquiao's age. They're concerned about his lack of activity, and they're concerned about the fact that Ugas is a guy who's a counterpuncher, who's going to make Pacquiao come forward and possibly make mistakes, and he's going to be able to catch Manny Pacquiao coming in. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ugas is going to be setting traps. Pacquiao is going to be feinting on the way in. He's going to be throwing throwaway punches on the way in. He's going to force Ugas to do things he's not going to want to do. I think Pacquiao is going to continuously throw that right jab out there as a feeler just to get Ugas to try to knock it down, break Ugas's rhythm, right? And he's going to be sneaking that straight left down the middle. And I think Pacquiao is going to have a great performance next week. I think you're going to see a great version of Manny Pacquiao, because Manny Pacquiao loves these guys who are just going to stand there and let him come forward, right? Now, it's one thing with Marquez. Marquez knew how to time Pacquiao, because when Pacquiao came forward, he would slide back subtly and step off and step off to his right, and he would just walk Manny Pacquiao perfectly into that right hand. Ugas has never seen Manny Pacquiao before in the ring. Marquez has seen Manny Pacquiao in the ring 4 times. So he each and every time he saw Manny Pacquiao, he was collecting that data. Ugas hasn't really had the opportunity to collect that data. It's one thing watching Pacquiao from the outside, but as Algieri said and Bradley said, when he's in there, it's a whole different ball game. He's much more faster in the ring than when you watch him on television or you watch him from the outside. So I think Ugas is going to be surprised with Manny Pacquiao's foot speed. He's going to be surprised with Manny Pacquiao's, punching sequences here, and the punching patterns and the attack patterns here. I think Pacquiao is just going to constantly force Ugas to react to what he's doing. And when you have an opponent who's constantly reacting to what you're doing, right? As opposed to, you know, them getting you to react to what they're doing, then that's going to be problematic for Ugas. So he's going to be the guy always having to reset and try to time Pacquiao and try to gauge Pacquiao. He's going to constantly have to think in this fight about what's coming at him and when it's going to come at him. And because of that, I believe Pacquiao is going to maybe not even outland, but he's going to land the cleaner, more significant blows. Right. So I think you could have a fight where you may be saying to yourself, yeah, Pacquiao's coming forward, he's throwing a lot of punches, but he's not really landing a lot of them. But Ugas is not throwing a lot, and he's not landing a lot either. So who do you give the round to? Again, three judges gave the fight to Manny Pacquiao when he fought Juan Manuel Marquez. Why? Because history has shown us that the judges will favor the busier guy in a round where not a lot of punches are landed. It showed us, the history showed us that last night. It showed us that in a lot of Erislandy Lara's fights, right? Where we thought Lara was landing the cleaner, better work in a lot of fights, but because his opponent threw more, because his opponent was moving forward and he was moving back, he did not get the benefit of the doubt in a lot of the rounds that he fought. And as a result of that, he lost a lot of close fights that some people thought he won. So at the end of the day, Pacquiao is going to be the busier guy, in my opinion. He's going to be landing the more eye-catching blows. And because of that, I see Manny Pacquiao winning a unanimous decision here. I don't think the judges are going to reward Ugas's economical style. You know, when you got a guy who's running the four-corner offense on you as a judge, not only as a fan, but as a judge, a lot of judges frown upon that style. They will frown upon that style. So I would recommend Manny Pacquiao by decision here at the plus 150. I don't think he's going to stop Ugas. Ugas is a strong, durable guy. He's in phenomenal shape. Pacquiao does not have that one-punch knockout power. My recommendation here is Pacquiao by decision. Take Pacquiao with the decision prop all the way here. Because even if Pacquiao isn't the best version of Pacquiao, right? Which I think he will be. I've seen him in camp. And again, you know, I'm looking for slippage. I'm looking for significant slippage with speed, reflexes, timing, and explosiveness. And he looks good. I mean, obviously, he's not going to be the same as he was 10 years ago, but I think he's still good enough and has retained enough of his speed, explosiveness, and reflexes where I think he could still beat a lot of guys. I would pick him to beat everyone in this welterweight division, except probably Jerome Boots Ennis, right? Except Boots Ennis, Terrence Crawford, right? And maybe Virgil Ortiz. Maybe Virgil Ortiz. But I think Boots Ennis and Crawford, I think, would definitely beat Manny Pacquiao. I think you can make an argument that Pacquiao could beat anyone else outside of those two fighters even at this advanced stage, as crazy as that may sound to some. So at the end of the day, I think Pacquiao will outwork and land the cleaner, more significant shots in this fight. And I think he will get a unanimous decision. So the play that I am recommending is take Manny Pacquiao with the plus 150 by unanimous decision, guys. It's the best bet out there, in my opinion. Because even if this fight is remotely close, you have to look at the empirical data. We have to look at the circumstantial evidence. We have to look at history and what history has shown us. Judges will not reward Ugas' style in a close, big fight. They just haven't done it. They just haven't done it. So that's the play I'm recommending. Make sure you check us out tonight, a Ringside Reporter podcast, 6 p.m. Eastern time, right before the Boxing Voice when they go live at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So before you check out the Boxing Voice, make sure you come check us out first. And then you can go over to the Boxing Voice. Make sure you check me out on the Ringside Reporter podcast. Make sure you check me out on the Roundtable with D-Style Boxing on his channel, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. And, make sure you check out Calix Boxing. Make sure you check out Emil Carr. Make sure you check out G Funky Boxing, Ring IQ, everybody in the HCP network. Make sure you check us all out. And we're going to be collaborating. Make sure you check out the Boxing Voice. And before I close, I just want to put this out there. I think most of you have heard me say this, and they know that I was picking Pac to even beat Spence. I just think Pacquiao's foot speed and Spence's, lack of foot speed, his lack of movement, and sometimes his lack of ability to cut off the ring against quicker guys. I think that Pacquiao would have beaten Spence too. So even though this is a different style matchup, I think Pacquiao had the style to beat both men, right? So as I said, Pacquiao, in my opinion, could beat anyone outside of Terrence Crawford and Jerome Boots Ennis. But Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Make sure you check us out tonight. And everyone stay safe, and I will see you all later. Have a great day. Peace out.